5:30 a.m. It's race day.
We're getting a little ACC rivalry here, my friend Serena. There we go. There's my UNC. She just said go Duke. Go, please go catch her. Go catch her and show her that shirt. Chicago, Houston. Oh yeah. Hey, let me know where you're from when you come by. We'll give you a little love. Some of my favorite cities. My friend Serena taking on the full marathon this morning as well. I'll tell you, I want to jump in and run with everybody. Everybody's making me jealous this morning. Everybody's having fun. Philadelphia, city of brotherly love, coming up from down south, making their way. We had some friends from Houston and Chicago. Anybody from Staten Island? I always like that thing.
All right, everybody. So where do I start and begin with the breakdown of this race? I guess I'll say this first. Back to a few GoPro issues. I just lost some of the last clips of like the finish line and the crowds that were going into Prospect Park towards the end of the race. Got pretty close with what I was able to share with you, but I just have some issues with the number of clips I can take sometimes with this GoPro. And although it's given me some issues, it's really the only thing I'm willing to run with actually on a race course. So I had to just learn to balance the number of clips or get the issues resolved. So I apologize for that. But I think you still can see how good the crowds were out there, how energetic, Brooklyn was that day. And that makes for a really fun race for everybody. So I guess let's start with my, race plan and everything that I was doing. I'll keep it really quick. Basically, I was going out for a hard effort long run, wanted to be around, 9:05 to 9:15 per mile and land somewhere right around the 2-hour mark for the race. This wasn't supposed to be an all-out effort for me. This was supposed to be a way to check out New York City Runs and share everything that they are going with and what they have to offer for the running community as kind of a second option to New York Roadrunners, so it was a chance to check out New York City Runs. Now, a couple issues I ran into. I had to get up really early. I actually drove from my place about an hour north of the city in that morning. I didn't really eat breakfast. I had like one Kind bar at 3 a.m. Then by the time the race started, that was like 4 hours ago. So I ran into issues where, one, I have a hard time slowing down during races. Who doesn't? I really just kind of got out there, and then you get kind of sucked up in the crowd, and I started, almost competing with myself where I was like, oh, I got to stay under 9 minutes per mile. I want to keep going quicker. And that, again, wasn't really the overall goal. It was to take a step back and be a little bit easier. Had some issues with water that I'll talk about soon. Didn't necessarily pack all my gels, just brought a little bit because, again, I wasn't really planning on going all out. And in the end, by the last, 2 or 3 miles, I kind of felt like I was almost hitting a wall, or at least just hitting a point where I didn't want to get to that level of exertion during this race because, again, it wasn't all out. I knew I had some time banked essentially because I was going too fast for myself in the beginning. So I settled in, slowed down a lot in the last couple miles, and just made sure to hit that 2-hour mark to keep myself happy. And that was pretty much spot on what happened. So that was my race. A few little issues here and there, some more details I'll dive into. So let's get into that. So let's start with the good things. Like I said, the crowd was a lot more than I expected. New York Roadrunners races kind of dominate when it comes to crowds, primarily with the New York City Marathon. Over 1 million spectators out there in the streets of New York. The New York City Half is also a huge crowd, generally speaking. The Brooklyn Half Marathon by New York Roadrunners, which is in a month or so, also very, very crowd heavy. But this was surprising to me. I mean, they really had a good crowd covering like most of the sections of the course. And that, again, keeps the energy up, keeps everything flowing, keeps people motivated. I can, specifically note a couple times that I heard people talking, like just in the finishing area, saying, oh man, did you hear all those crowds? Like that really kept me going. That was really energetic. That was, that was a big boost to me, finishing fast and all these things. Like I truly heard a lot of comments about the crowds and how it kept people going. So that's a big plus. The other thing that I think is kind of a positive about this race is, one, it's cheaper than the New York Roadrunners, like big races like the half marathon and marathon. And it's a very different feeling kind of group of runners. New York Roadrunners feels like people who are really going out there to like dominate their race and really put their best time on the board. There are club points and other things that are involved with New York Roadrunners as well. So that kind of impacts how people go out there in the mindset on their race day. Most people have like the most elite racing shoes out there. They're really looking to go hard. This has a vibe, and I kind of say it's almost like a weird thing, but you might understand if you are thinking about it like me. They're not even like the Vaporfly and the Alpha Fly are not the dominant shoes at this New York City Runs race. There was all kinds of shoes out there, from Asics Nova Blast to Glide Ride to crazy shoes that I haven't even seen people running in. Someone was in a Solomon trail shoe. But my point is, like, these are just people who want to go out there and have a race and have fun. There was tons of groups of like buddies and friends that were together out there. So it was just about going out there and doing your thing for a race. running a half marathon, challenging themselves, or running a full marathon and challenging themselves. This just felt more like a day to go out and have fun. It was a fun environment. The other nice thing was there was always a ton of people around me on the course. Having the volume of people and groups you can follow and packs of people you can follow is generally a good thing. There were also some pacers available, I believe, but they were admittedly a little bit difficult to find. And I think they were actually only in wave 1, which was like anyone who was doing the marathon and the fastest group of people that were doing the half marathon. So not the biggest selection of pacers that I could find, but there were some out there if you were running the full marathon and that's something you were interested in. Just to go back to the previous day I made a video, the expo was also pretty cool, which is nice when you're doing a big race like this. And the medal is really unique. I think that this medal is really fun. Just if you're into medals, it's a fun one to get. So I'm sure in years in the future, there'll also be fun colors and just overall cool medals to see and receive when you finish your race. Now, to be fair, I'm going to include some things that maybe were not so ideal, so it's, a well-rounded video and not so one-sided. The first thing I'll say is some of the water on the course was actually an issue for me, again, because I hadn't really eaten, and that was my own fault. I started to lose a lot of energy and kind of actually get dehydrated towards the end of the race as the sun came out and it warmed up, because the tables in the beginning of the race were not managed correctly. And I think they were mentioning how this is the biggest race that they've ever put on themselves. This race started not too long ago as just loops in Prospect Park. So this is a big step forward for NYCRuns, but they didn't anticipate well enough how many runners come through a water station and how quickly the whole cup selection that people set up, well before the race even starts, how quickly people would burn through that. And then they were stuck trying to pour cups with volunteers as quickly as they could. But as hundreds of runners are running through, there's really no way for individuals to keep up with pouring cups of water. So you would have either had to stop and wait for a personally poured cup of water for you to have a little drink, or you basically bypassed the water stations. They also weren't as frequent as, say, the New York City Marathon. I think those are like every mile. This was like mile 2, mile 3.5, and then there were some other ones in the future as well, but it's more spaced out, and if you can't get water at those stations and you blow by it, you're really setting yourself back by missing water for 3-4 miles at a time if they're not able to keep up with that water thing. So that's a big issue in my opinion, and again, it led to me having a harder race, I think, than I meant to. Again, some of it's my fault, some of it is just really came down to I didn't have enough fluids or anything that were going into my body as it warmed up, and I was running, again, just kind of harder than I meant to. Another tough thing is this is a really hard course. Most races try, even if there's hills, to end and start, more or less at the same elevation, but this race does truly at one point kind of go up a big hill, continue to be hilly, but it never comes back down to give you that extra benefit of the same, downhill portion that you had in uphill. So it was pretty rough. I heard a lot of people again on the course mentioning like, oh, we're going to go up another hill. Oh, we're going to do this again. Oh my gosh, we have to turn around and go that way. It just is noticeably hilly and difficult at the end. Again, part of what kind of made it harder of a race than I meant for it to be. This is still sea level, so it's got good and bad, but it's definitely hillier for this area. And again, finishing at a much higher elevation than the start is a little bit unique for most road races. The only other challenge I'll say about this race was simply that the starting line is in a particular area of New York City in the borough of Brooklyn with not a lot of subway access. There's really only the G train, and the G train does not necessarily go a lot of places. It kind of just goes between Queens and Brooklyn in a unique way that other subways connect with it, and you have to transfer and all these things, but it's just a little bit of an inconvenient starting point. And there's also not a lot of parking or anything like that if you wanted to drive. So if you're coming from out of town, it's a little bit difficult to plan out the day. I pretty much parked and got lucky enough to park near the start, did a little warm-up jog to the actual, McCarran Park starting area, and then had to get on the subway at the end of the race myself and take about a 40-minute ride back to my car near the start. So it starts and ends in a different location. And again, just those areas, Prospect Park where it finishes is not bad at all with subway access, but getting back to where you started or getting to the start in the morning is a little bit difficult just of a location to choose to start. But I think it was a good choice for the course itself and the crowds, and it's where you can handle that many people in Brooklyn. Just, you know, again, access is not top of the line for that particular area. Well, with that, one more clip failed, but either way, that's everything. Hope you enjoyed, and hope to see you in the next video.